Hey everybody, trying to sit down crisscross applesauce. See how long I can do that. Here we are in Texas. Oh, the air. Anyway, okay. So we're about to do early Latin America. This is chapter 19. This week we're going to do chapter 19 and chapter 20, but I'm just going to do chapter 19 for this video. I'm going to do chapter 20 in a little bit, or tomorrow. I've got time. No worries. This is my TV. This is the apartment. And, okay. I hope you guys are doing great. Shall we? Ladies and gentlemen, the Reconquista. Actually, maybe we should start with the Conquista first, right? That makes more sense. So in the year 711, that seems like that's an easy date to remember. Man, I could totally go for an icy right now. In the year 711, the Muslims, the Moors, the people of the Islamic faith, they're coming from North Africa and they're crossing from Morocco up to, oh wait, I've got a little map, check that out. Up from Morocco, up to, my arm didn't bend like that, up to Spain, across the Strait of Gibraltar there, and they're going to conquer Spain in 711. And so you think about Spain being your Catholic Spain, right? Well, no, not for about 700 years here. They're not going to be. They're going to be Islamic. They're going to be Muslim. And so let's see. There's a whole bunch of Christian kings and queens who are going to try to push the Muslims out during those 700 years, including some of the names up here on the list. We've got Pepin the Short, and we've got, just a second, my daughter just, what? All right, she's just going. We've got Pepin the Short, and then his son Charlemagne, and you will remember Charlemagne. He's the one that put the crown. No, wait, he's the one that had the crown put on his head by the Pope, and put the crown on his head by the Pope, and then that whole thing started the Holy Roman Empire, etc., etc. And then we had Pope Urban II, and he's the one that said, hey, if you go down to Jerusalem and you go attack the Muslims down in Jerusalem, then you get free indulgences, and hey, it's a party for everybody. And so we're talking about some big names that we've already talked about. Yes, you remember that, those of you who are off your phones right now. Okay. And then, let's see. Alfonso, I've got my cheat notes like right there. You can't see him, but they're right there. Alfonso Enriquez. Oh, I'm going to tell you right now, there's going to be a whole bunch of Spanish names. I'm going to butcher them right now, but yeah, give it to me. Just let me try. Alfonso Enriquez, King of Portugal. So what happened was that Portugal, right here today, there's Spain and Portugal. Portugal is the King Enriquez. He's a vassal of the King of Leon, and he emails the Pope, and the Pope says, yeah, I'm going to let you stay a vassal. And then Enriquez says, well, tell you what if I start kicking out the Muslims and making sure everybody in Portugal is Christian? And of course, then the Pope was like, I'm interested, tell me more. And so when that happened, then the Pope signed this document, and we call that a papal bull. A papal bull is a document signed by the Pope, which basically is law for Christians. So there you go, papal bull. And then, well, then we get to the big dogs, right? King Ferdinand, Queen Isabella. You know them as, oh, those are the two people that gave the boats to Columbus, right? Remember, Columbus said, hey, Your Majesty is going to go over there to, which way am I going on the map? Going to go that direction, and we're going to find a new way to the New World, or to the Old World, to the Spice World. And Spice World, that's an interesting idea. And then, I'm going to convert all the people to Christianity. And then Isabella's like, oh yeah, I'm going to give you 3 ships, and there you go. 1492. But remember, more importantly, for world history, 1492, Spain was successful in kicking out the Muslims, kicked them all the way out south, kicked them back into North Africa. We call that the Reconquista, And so that's happened in 1492. Okay, so 1492, Columbus sails the ocean blue, and the Muslims were kicked out of Spain. Note, just kind of a comparison, if you recall, we have under the Muslim rule, remember we have Christians that are over there in the Muslim lands, that they are allowed to stay as Christians, but then they have to pay the Christian tax. We call that the jizya tax. But the Christians here in Spain are not as accommodating, and so the Spanish king and queen basically say, if you're not Christian, get out. And he's also talking about the Jews also. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so the 11-year-old. What are you going to do? The 11-year-old. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. We'll get to the Spanish Inquisition in a second. So in 1478 to 1834. Oh wait, here's the second Spanish Inquisition. So how do I want to do this? The Spanish Inquisition was a tool used by the Spanish government that enforced conversion to Christianity, and specifically went after Muslims. Ow, I cannot sit crisscross applesauce this long. You too will become 53, and you won't be able to sit like that for that long. They go after Christians and Jews. No, I'm sorry. They go after Muslims and Jews who converted to Christianity, but only kind of converted. And so, if you only kind of convert, if you're like, I'm good with the Father and the Son, but not the Holy Ghost, or if I'm good with the Holy Ghost and the Father, but not the Son, if you're missing one of the big three, then that's called heresy. And the Spanish Inquisition was known to go around and make sure that you were a big believer in all three of those, and if not, they would either remove you, like kick you out of the country, or they would remove you from the playing board, like. Yeah, it says there on the 150,000 tried for heresy. Between 2,000 to 5,000 executed. Ultimately, the goal here for the Spanish Inquisition is that they don't want a fifth column. So here's a new vocabulary. Put this in your head. Fifth column. A fifth column is a group of people who are working inside a country, usually under the guise of, yes, we're part of your country and we love to be fill-in country people here, and yes, this is great and everything's wonderful, but secretly we're working for the other country, and when somebody gives us the code word, gives us a signal, we're going to rise up and do terrible things to your country. And so the Spanish Inquisition, specifically the king and queen, etc., of Spain, they were afraid that the converted Muslims, the converted Jews, were all in on it against them. And so the Spanish Inquisition was there to remove that threat. Threats were removed using auto de fe. That's something faith. Auto one of faith, something of faith, decree of faith. Anyway, auto de faith was public penance. So that was either dragging the giant cross behind you, or getting flailed, or imprisonment, or burning people at the stake. Yeah. So on a lighter note, nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. The picture at the top, right? Is that to my right or to my left? Because I'm looking at a little screen of my little thing, and it's backwards. So I guess that would be to my. From your point, it doesn't matter. Anyway, these guys right here, Monty Python, back in the 70s, they were a sketch group. A comedy sketch group, and they had a sketch that's called The Spanish Inquisition. You should pause this video here in just a second. Go out to YouTube, type in Monty Python Spanish Inquisition. Yes, this is where the meme came from. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. There's 2 or 3 or 4 different sketches. The whole thing's about 9 minutes, but if you watch the first 3 or 4 minutes, then you can see, because the Spanish Inquisition, terror and surprise and terror, and I don't know all 4 of them, but pause this video. Ready? Pause. Okay, now that you're back, wonderful. Did you like it? I told you it was awesome. Anyway, nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. Moving on. The encomienda system. All right, this is one of those things you got to remember. This is falls under government. Falls under government. So this is the hard one because this is one that we have trouble with. Encomienda. It's a very simple idea. Okay, it's an idea. I don't know if it's simple. The king. What are we going to do? What are we going to do with Spanish Christians? Conquistadors are going to come over here to the new lands, because this is what we're really talking about. Coming over here to the new lands, coming over here to Mexico, coming over here to the islands, and what we're going to do with the indigenous people. And so the king and queen, the kings and or queens, they decided to introduce the system called the encomienda system. And the short version is that the conquistadors would be granted indigenous people, so the Aztec people. We don't like to use the word slaves because actually the queen of Spain was very anti-Spain anti-slave at that time. That's going to change, but she didn't like that word, and so we're not going to use the word slave. We're just going to use servants, enforced servitude, and kind of like what we're going to see in next chapter. Hey, yes, we're going to rip you from your families, and we're going to do all these terrible things, and we're going to force you to work on the fields of the plantations. And hey, but you know what? We're going to introduce you to Jesus, so that's worth it right there. That was the encomienda system. And let's see. So you can read all about it. It says something about the natives. The natives, talking about the Aztecs, would give tributes in the forms of metals and maize and wheat and pork and agricultural products, and there you go. And even after, even into the mid 1500s, when we had the real audiences. So an audience is where you have like a judge, a court system. Yeah. So we had like the very first court system, Spanish court system in Mexico, down in Mexico City. And so even when we had the court system, they still approved the encomiendas. Okay, now it's about to get yucky. Oh, here we go. Crisscross applesauce. It's about to get yucky, guys. Bartolome de las Casas. So this guy, he's given the title of Protector of the Indians because he's going to go to court and he's going to speak on the Indian, and when we say Indians, I'm talking about the indigenous peoples of Mexico primarily for the purposes of this chapter. And so we're talking about the Aztecs primarily, and or the Incas and or but the Aztecs. So but the Indians. And so he where was I going with that? Bartolome de las Casas. He would speak on their behalf in the courts because nobody else was speaking for them. And he documented and wrote about some awful things. I'm going to read this little paragraph. It goes like this. Hold on to your hats, although it's going to get worse. He wrote in a short account of the destruction of the Indies in 1542. He says, quote, "The Spaniards first assaulted the innocent sheep. Sheep, talking about the Aztecs. The innocent sheep, so qualified by the Almighty as is pre-mentioned, like most cruel tigers, wolves, and lions, hunger-starved, studying nothing for the space of 40 years after their first landing. But the massacre of these wretches, whom they have so inhumanely and barbarously butchered and harassed with several kinds of torments, never before known or heard of, which you shall have some account in the following discourse, that at 3 millions of persons which lived in Hispaniola itself, there is at present but the inconsiderable remnant of scarce 300. So de las Casas is saying that, the Spanish showed up and wiped out like from 3 million people to 300 people. That's a lot of people who are going to die. Okay, so if we only know 2 or 3 of the big dogs of the conquistadors, Cortez, he's probably number 1. I mean Columbus because Colombian trade and all that, but Cortez. So Cortez was born in Spain, and he grew up wanting to be an adventurer, so he's going to go to Cuba. Well, he goes to some other islands, but eventually he arrives in Cuba, and he starts talking about adventure. And so then he becomes friends with the viceroy of Cuba, the governor of Cuba, and everything's going great and everything's going awesome. And then the viceroy is like, hey, Cortez, why don't you take a group of soldiers and why don't you go over there and see what you can do? Am I going the right way on the map? Why don't you get that? Doesn't matter. And why don't you go over there to Mexico and see what you can do about those Aztecs? Because it seems like, you know, we could be converting them to Jesus, to Christianity, and or, you know, gold. And so why don't you go do that? And Hernan Cortez says, yeah, I'm going. And then I guess somebody said something about somebody's mama. I don't know. It's not real clear in any of the histories that I was able to read. That they had a falling out, and the viceroy said, as Cortez is basically walking out the door, the viceroy goes, no, I'm not going to let you go. I'm not going to let you go. I'm not going to let you go. You can't go to Cuba. No. And Cortez is like, see ya. And so he takes his ships and he goes to like the other side of Cuba, and he grabs some soldiers, and then they start going over there to Mexico proper. And then things happen, right? We've got a whole bunch of stuff. Cortez has actually never been a military general, and so he's a leader of men but not of military, and so he has to figure it out as he's going, which is okay because he's going to do pretty well. He's going to be in several small battles there on the coast, and then he's going to get a reputation for being a winner, and then people are going to start flocking to him. And when I say people, we're talking about the Aztec people. The Aztecs, and we mentioned this before, remember we were talking about the size of Tenochtitlan versus the other sizes, the 6A schools versus the 2A schools. Well, all those little bitty 1A and 2A and 3A schools there in the Aztec lands, they all were like, hey, you're interested in beating up the big boy, the 6A, Tenochtitlan? Maybe we're going to join you. And so Cortez got a whole bunch of the smaller Aztec tribes to join him. During one battle that he won, Cortez was awarded 20 women, and one of them, her name was Doña Marina. Doña Marina. We call her La Malinche. Oh, I'm so sorry if I mess that up. I think that's right. La Malinche. Anyway, so she's going to be an interpreter, kind of like Sacagawea. You know that story. So she's going to be an interpreter for Cortez because she speaks a couple of different Aztec languages, including Nahuatl, which is what Montezuma speaks over there in Tenochtitlan. Anyway, so he's going to have a kid with her. They're going to name him Martin. Is that important? I don't think that's important. And there you go. Today, it's kind of interesting. People celebrate her both positively and negatively. Kind of like when we talk about next year when we do AP U.S. history, we talk about the General Benedict Arnold. General Arnold, you think about General Arnold, and he did some amazing things out there on the battlefield. He won a couple battles for us, and he was a great guy, General Arnold. And now you're like, wait, Benedict Arnold, isn't he the guy that was the traitor during he backstabbed General Washington and right. And so Cortez's woman, she both sides. She pro-Spanish, anti, People see her both ways, both as a good person that started the new, basically, peoples of Mexico, but also basically backstabbed Montezuma. Okay, now we're done with that, right? Oh, we have more about Cortez. So Cortez, he's going to take his group and he's going to go to Tenochtitlan. Today we call that Mexico City, but he's going to go to Tenochtitlan, and there's Montezuma. And Montezuma knows he's coming. This is actually Montezuma the second. And so Montezuma, Cortez shows up, and Montezuma invites him into the city. I guess Cortez may have been, now, all right, this is totally, I don't want to say fabricated. I want to say it's anecdotal. Remember, anecdotal story is a story that is a cool story, but probably not true. The story is that he rode in on his white horse with his guns, Cortez, And so the people of Mexico were like, oh my goodness, check this out. 500 years ago we had that prophet, you guys remember this? That prophet who told us that there would be a white god, Quetzalcoatl. He'd come in, and he's all white, and he'd be riding on this magnificent beast, and he'd have boomsticks, fire sticks, and here comes Cortez riding on his giant horse, and of course Cortez is white, and he's got his fire sticks, and people are like, oh, maybe he's the god Quetzalcoatl returned, and everybody's like, oh, or was it Huitzilopochtli? Nah, it was one of those Aztec gods. I think it's Huitzilopochtli now I think about it. Anyway, now whether Montezuma believed that or not is kind of a cool story. How 500 years he fulfilled the prophecy. Interesting. So Cortez, he shows up, he meets Montezuma. Montezuma has a whole bunch of gold, and Montezuma's like, hey, let's give you gifts because you're visitors. Mistake number one by Montezuma. Basically, this is his only big mistake. He says, hey, Spanish people, check this out. We have a ton of gold sitting here. We're going to give you some as visitors. And the Spanish people are like, gold? Interesting. How much more gold do you got over there? So, lots of stuff going on. We have the viceroy from Cuba who's upset because Cortez came over when he shouldn't have come over. And so the viceroy sends an army over to defeat Cortez. Cortez keeps a small garrison of troops there in Tenochtitlan. Cortez then goes back to the beach and beats up the viceroy's group and actually convinces some of the viceroy's group to join him because Cortez is like, man, there's so much gold here, we're all going to go home rich. And then he comes back. Meanwhile, while he was out there putting down those rebellions, his buddies who were still in Tenochtitlan made a mistake, and so Montezuma went to the lieutenant and said, hey, can we have this festival? And so they had and the lieutenant said, yeah, go ahead. And so the Aztec version of the story says that a whole bunch of the elite, the rich, were in this temple and they were celebrating one of the gods, and the Spanish came in and killed everybody for their gold because the elites were wearing a whole bunch of gold, and that was that. And the Spanish version is, I think the Spanish version is pretty close to that they killed those people for their gold, but that wasn't good. And so when Cortez came back, the people of Tenochtitlan were very upset about that. Cortez, crisscross applesauce, not working. All right. And so Cortez, what do I want to say? Held hostage, took prisoner. Let's go with that. Took prisoner of Montezuma, held him for about 90 days while things were going crazy. The local Aztecs were harassing the Spanish, etc., etc., etc. And then eventually Cortez told Montezuma, hey man, I need you to go outside and I need you to calm everybody down because it's starting to get way out of control. And so Montezuma went outside and he's like, hey guys, it's all good. And then he was stoned to death by his own people, which set off a whole series of crazy things. And so Cortez realizes this is not a good place to be right now, so we got to get out of Tenochtitlan. So he's got a couple of different options to get out of the city, but there are 8 ways out of the city, and the Aztecs had burned four of those bridges, and so they're down to 4 bridges. And so he chooses the one that's the shortest one outside the city, and he tells his guys, he says, guys, we're leaving tonight, so do this. Here comes a thunderstorm. We're going to go during the rain, and we're going to take as much gold as basically our horses can carry, and then anything else that you want to put in your pockets, that's on you. Just make sure we're all leaving at the same time, which turned out not so good. We call this La Noche Triste, the night of crying. And so what happens was, yes, it did start to rain, and the Spanish were able to sneak out, and they were sneaking out of the city, and they were just almost almost out, and there's a lady outside, and she was farming, I guess, out in the rain or whatever she was doing out there. And she's like, ah, wait, they're leaving. And then she started screaming, and then this priest started screaming, and then everybody started screaming, and suddenly the Spanish were being attacked from all sorts of places. The Aztecs were coming up on the bridge, on the sides of the bridge with canoes and throwing stuff at them. And so basically Hernan Cortez, he's like, run, everybody run. And, you know, running's not a big deal. Running with pockets full of very, very heavy gold, more of a big deal. And then if you get knocked off the bridge and you have pockets full of heavy gold, you tend to sink pretty fast. And all those horses, yeah, the horses too, right into the river, and then they all sank. And I know that's actually the sad part, because, you know, the men, that's on them, but the horses, the poor horses. Cortez, he made it across the bridge. He and a couple of his lieutenants, he made it across the bridge, and he turned back around and he saw that, oof, wow, a whole bunch of his guys died. And then the story says he cried just a little bit, and that's La Noche Triste. La Noche Triste. And so there you go. And then so he's going to eventually be able to ride. I was going to say north, but I don't know which direction it was. He's going to ride to another town, a couple of clicks away, and he's going to get himself reorganized, and then he's going to come back, and he's just going to smash Mexico City. And that is the end of the Aztecs. Okay. Wow. And now let's jump over the pond, and here we are in the Americas. And so we have our next. I think this might be our last one. So we only have really three. Okay, that's good enough. Coronado, Francisco Vasquez de Coronado. And so why is he important? He's going to start down there in Mexico City-ish. It looks like the same latitude. And he's going to be on the west side of Mexico, and he's going to go up Mexico, and then ultimately he's looking for gold. Let's just say it. He's looking for gold. He's looking for gold. So he goes up. He's going up the west side of Mexico, and he's going to go up to the basically Arizona and New Mexico border, and he's going to go see the Zuni Indians. The Zuni Indians are not going to have any gold, and so he's not going to be very happy about that. And he's going to cross up into he hears rumors of the 7 cities of gold, the cities of Cibola, the seven cities of Cibola, the cities of gold. And so they're going to go up there, and he's going to become rich, and it's going to be wonderful, and people are going to be talking about him for the rest of. Well, actually, we are talking about him. Interesting, but there's no gold up in Kansas, because Kansas. Yeah, I'd have a joke about Kansas, but it is what it is. And so, so he goes up to Kansas, and he doesn't find any gold, and so he's going to come back. And by the way, he goes to the Oklahoma Panhandle, which is why that's important for us, because he's the first European, officially the leader, to go through Oklahoma. And so 1541, I think. Yeah, right there. Look at the date right there. Right there, 1541. Huh. Okay. And then when he gets back, he's going to make some very poor decisions about his monies and or his leadership ability, and he's going to get thrown in jail, try to work crimes, and then die. I want to say from syphilis. Whatever. All right. This next part's yucky. Oh, this is yucky, but this next part's yucky. This is the requiremento, and so I'm gonna actually read it, and so here's the situation. So, and Coronado did this, but a lot of them did as well. And so the idea is that we're going to convert the Spanish conquistadors are going to convert the Native Americans. And so we're talking about the Zunis or the Hopi or whoever they run into. And so the Spanish have this letter that they read, and it's right there. It's right there. The Spanish requirement of 1513, requirementio, and they're going to read this in Spanish. I'm going to read it to you in English, and it's kind of interesting. Simply because it's kind of interesting, so I'm going to read this part. It gets really interesting in the last paragraph, but let me blow through it real fast. It goes like this. On the part of the king, ooh, that's a little far from me. Let me pull that closer so I can see it. On the part of the king, Don Fernando and Doña Juana, his daughter, Queen of Castile and Leon. I'll be right back. Just a second. Don't go anywhere. the daughter's singing in her bedroom, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to hear her. I don't want to hear SpongeBob or whatever she's singing. Okay. Where were we? The Spanish requiremento. On the part of the king, Don Fernando and Doña Juana, his daughter, Queen of Castile and Leon, subduers of the barbarous nations, we, their servants, notify... We were talking about the conquistadors, who are reading this letter probably from horseback. We, their servants, notify and make known to you as best we can that the Lord our God, living and eternal, creating the heaven and the earth, and one man and one woman, of whom you and we, and all the men of the world, were and are all descendants, and all those who come after us. Did that sentence have a verb in it? Notify and make known to you. Okay, yes. Of all these nations, God our Lord gave charge to one man, called St. Peter, that he should be Lord and superior of all the men in the world, that they all should obey him, that he should be the head of the whole human race, wherever men should live, and under whatever law, sect, or belief that they should be, and he gave him the world for his kingdom and jurisdiction. So basically that first paragraph says, hey, we're all in this together, and we know that we are, and the big dog is the Pope. One of these pontiffs, who succeeded St. Peter as Lord of the world in the dignity and seat which I have been before mentioned, made donation of these isles and terra firma to the aforesaid king and queen and to their successors, our lords, with all that there are in these territories. So that paragraph just said, and we just claimed all of this. Wherefore, as best we can, we ask and require you that you consider what we have said to you, and that you take the time that shall be necessary to understand and deliberate upon it, and that you acknowledge the church as the ruler and superior of the whole world. Okay, well there you go. All you got to do is admit that the church, Catholic Church, capital C, the church, is in charge of everybody. That's all you got to do. And here comes paragraph 4. But if you do not do this, reset, but if you do not do this and maliciously make delay in it, I certify to you that, with the help of God, we shall powerfully enter into your country, and shall make war against you in all ways and manners that we can, and shall subject you to the yoke and obedience of the church and of their highnesses. We shall take you and your wives and your children, and shall make slaves of them, and as such shall sell and dispose of them as their highnesses may command. And we shall take away your goods, and shall do you all the mischief and damage that we can, as to vassals who do not obey, and refuse to receive their lord, and resist and contradict him. And we protest that the deaths and losses which shall accrue from this are your fault, and not that of their highnesses, or ours, nor of these cavaliers who come with us, meaning the soldiers. All right, so let's break this down. Paragraph 1. We're all one big family. The Pope's in charge. Paragraph 2. We own this land. The Spanish, we own this land. Paragraph 3. You got to make a decision. The church is in charge. You got to say it out loud. Paragraph 4. If you don't, we're going to kill you. That's the short version. Hey, here's the best part about this. How many of the Zuni Indians or the Hopi Indians or the Choctaw, Cherokee, Creek Indians, then all those Native Americans, how many of them spoke Spanish? Huh. So that'd be like me reading this to you and saying that since I'm in charge of the class, I'm going to give everybody in here an A. But you have to say that Dr. Jones is the greatest world history teacher of all time. You got to say that. Else, I'm going to give you an F. But here's the catch. I say all of that in Klingon, and I don't think any of you speak Klingon. I don't speak a lot of Klingon. Nuchnech, that means, that's hello in Klingon. It actually means what do you want, because they're not very polite. And poch, that's, so if you take a little bitty animal, poch is a I wouldn't say it's like a cuss word, but it's like a when you're referring to somebody as a varmint or a rat or just a little bitty. Actually, poch is kind of like you take a rat and you squeeze it really hard. What comes out of the rat, that's poch. So there you go. And now you know 2 Klingon words. But imagine if I were to ask you to do all those things in Klingon, you don't know what's going on, right? So the requirementio, which is telling all these Native Americans, hey, you got to convert like right now, and you got to say it. But they're doing it in a language that ooh, that's not cool. We already talked about the Columbian Exchange. We talked about the different potatoes going this way and grapes going that way and turkeys going this way and pumpkins going that way and all the different ways and et cetera, across the pond. And then we talked about the diseases, right? And so the Europeans are going to give diseases to the Native Americans, and so we talk about what smallpox, that's the big one, smallpox, and the flu and typhoid and tuberculosis, and there was a list. Remember that list maybe? And of course, then the Native Americans gave the Europeans syphilis, so it is what it is. Oh, I've got a small list right there on the screen. Look at that: cholera, measles, smallpox, and wars. War is not a thing. For what they gave. Oh, I guess. Look at that. Estimates as low as 8.4 million to as high as 117 million Native Americans who died. Between 8 million and 117 million. No, just think about that right there. That's how much we don't know about Native Americans. Just look at that number. Between 8 million and 117 million people died. We don't know. It could be as high as 117 million. It could be only 8 million. That's a ton of people. But it's such a big spread of our ignorance of how much we don't know about Native American tribes that were over here that we'll never know about ever because of the diseases and things that were brought. Okay, and so here's Bartolomé de las Casas. I'm going to try crisscross. Here's Bartolomé de las Casas, and he's going to, remember he said, hey, I'm going to tell you about some terrible things. Well, here are some of the terrible things. Quote, such inhumanities, rapes, dismemberments, and barbarisms were committed in my sight as no age can parallel. The Spanish cut off the legs of children who ran from them. They poured people full of boiling soap. They made bets as to who, with one sweep of his sword, could cut a person in half. They loosed dogs that devoured an Indian like a hog at first sight in less than a moment. They used nursing infants for dog food. I like the picture. Homeland Security, fighting terrorism since 1492. And he said, the Native American guys with their guns. It's funny. It's ironic. It's ironic. Okay. How is your cursive reading? Can you read in cursive? Can you read in cursive? This is a letter from Lord Amherst to a friend in 1763, making plans for blanket warfare. Now this is just, all right, there's dastardly, there's bad, there's maniacal, but then there's evil. It's just evil. This is evil, capital E. You take somebody who has smallpox, you wrap them up in a blanket, you take that blanket and you rub that blanket all over them so it gets all that pus and stuff and all that stuff onto the blanket. Then you take the blanket off the person and you fold that blanket up nice and neat, and then you take the blanket and you go over to another Native American tribe and you're like, hey everybody, free blankets. Yeah. Today we call that biological warfare. That's like against the Geneva Convention. We'll talk about that later, but biological warfare, not cool. Evil. All right. Take a second. Can you read it? I'll read it for you. Here it goes. It goes like this. Oh, you will be well to try to inoculate the Indians by means of blankets, as well as to try every other method that can serve to interpret their irascible race. I should be very glad your scheme for hunting them down by dogs could take effect. Silver. Not only gold, but the Inca, man, the Incas, oof, they had a lot of silver. And now that we have all this gold and we have all this silver, and we're going to put it on the ships and we're going to ship it back to Spain. And Spain's going to start paying for all sorts of silk, and now we got the Silk Road, and all that coin's going to go to China, and we're going to go back and forth. And now a whole bunch of people have a whole bunch of money, and what's that going to do to the economy? Can we say Mansa Musa? Not quite as bad as Mansa Musa, but yeah, maybe. Yeah. New topic, the hacienda. Large houses usually tied to the encomienda system. That's all I want to say about that. Government. Governorships and viceroys, and so the viceroy is kind of like a governor, right? Kind of, senator maybe. Appointed by the King of Spain, so Spain divided the world into two different parts. Now remember, we also divided the whole world between the Portuguese and the Spanish-speaking, right? The Treaty of... All right, I'm sure you know it. Now you're like, Dr. Jones, are you having a senior moment? You can't remember the name of the treaty? I resent Tordesillas. I knew I'd get it. The Treaty of Tordesillas. So let me restart that whole thing. Divided the whole world between the Spanish-speaking and the Portuguese-speaking people. Remember the Treaty of Tordesillas? I know you remember that. So here, the Spanish are going to divide the Spanish-speaking into two different groups. And so we have North America, Central America, and the Philippines. Remember the whole, right? And the capital city is going to be Mexico City. And then we have all of basically South America. And the capital city is going to be in Lima, which would be Peru. Geography, right there. Viceroys were added under the Bourbons to encourage growth at Bogota, that would be Colombia, and Rio de la Plata, also known as Buenos Aires. So that would be a place you don't want to be when the Clendathu attack. Does anybody get that reference? When the Clendathu attack, don't be in Buenos Aires. Argentina, by the way. Don't be in Buenos Aires. Clendathu. I've got like 4 more slides and I'm done. Okay. Glucose and fructose, or glucose and fructose, whichever way it is. Yeah. Sugar, man, sugar cane down to Brazil, right? And or legs falling asleep. And or Cuba and or the islands in the Caribbean. Sugar cane is incredibly labor intensive. So got to harvest it, so cut it down. You got to cut it down, and then you got to pulp it, and so that basically means you smash it. And we're not talking. I mean, you got to smash this at that time with rocks and big whatever you could do to smash it, and you get all the juices out of it. And then you got to evaporate everything. Oh man! And then on top of that, you got to separate the sugar, the crystals from the molasses, and then you got to. Oh my goodness! It is very, very labor intensive. And why is that important? Because when the when the Spanish came over here and they introduced all those diseases, and all those Native Americans died. And now there's nobody over here in the Americas to do all that very heavy labor-intensive work. Where, oh, where are the people of Europe going to find people to do heavy labor? Well, that's next chapter. Okay. Latin America had a very interesting caste system. Remember we were talking about the Hindus and their caste system, where you have the people at the cow at the very top, but then you have all the people all the way down. Well, Latin America also has this caste system, and it's literally based on who your father and mother are with regard to their race. Okay, so here's this interesting chart, and I'm not going to do all of them, but some of them are kind of, well, they're all interesting. But the first, at the very top of the pyramid is a peninsulare, and that is somebody who is born in Europe. So if you're born on the Iberian Peninsula, if you're born in Spain, if you're born in Portugal, then you're at the very top, and you came across the pond, then you're the big dog. If you're a Criollos, I should have practiced Criollos. The double L is a Y, Criollos. Wow. Yeah, I should have practiced that. If your mom and dad are peninsulares, that they came from Spain, that they were born in Spain, and you're born over here, then you are second tier. And then you get a whole bunch of third tier, and here we go, third through 20th tier. And so here we go. And so I gotta get closer. It says this. Okay, if your dad is original Spanish and your mom is indigena, so she would like Native American, then that makes you a mestizo. If your dad is indigenous and your mom is black, then you're a Zambo. If your dad is white and your mom is black, then that makes you a mulatto. If your mom is mulatto and your dad is white, that makes you a Morisco. If your mom is Native American and your dad is a mestizo, that makes you a coyote, and we can go all the way down the list. It even talks about Chinese. It talks about, oh wow, boy, and that gets really crazy. Yeah, the short version there is, who's your daddy? Like, no, that's like a real thing. Like, who's your dad? And then that puts you in which caste you are. And then, right, so that's, stop. Okay. If we compare, wow, we really are towards the end here. If we compare the different pyramids, I know you can't see that very well, but right there, that's the Hindu caste system. So you have the different peoples, and at the very top you have the priests, because the priests are at the very top. And here we have that one. It looks like a pyramid. Oh, it is. Well, I guess they're all pyramids, well, most of them. And so that's the Egyptian one. The Egyptian one. So you have at the bottom, it looks like you have you've got farmers and etc. At the very top, you got the pharaoh at the very top. And then this one up here, this is Chinese. And so the Chinese, and so at the bottom, I think we talked about this, at the bottom you have you have slaves. Slaves. And then you have, the second at the bottom, you have merchants. Because what do merchants actually do? They just sell stuff that they're not important. And then above that, you have, in the pink, you have the fine arts the fine arts people. Nah, they're not important, the fine arts people. And then above them, in the orange or in the red, you've got the peasants. The peasants are above the fine arts people, who are above the merchants, who are above the slaves. And then you got people at the orange. You've got the court, the nobles, the governor, and at the top you got the emperor. So that's the Chinese. And then here in ancient Rome, that's the blue one. You've got the slaves at the bottom, and the freemen, and the plebeians, and the patricians, and then the emperor at the very top. And then here That one right there. That's the Pope. The Pope is at the top. It looks like the Pope's at the top. Oh, this is Europe. This is Europe. And so at the bottom you have the peasants and the serfs, and then you have the farmers next, and you have the vassals like the knights. And we talked about, you know, you got the knights and the sirs and the ladies, and then the counts and the viscounts and the earls and the dukes and in the very top you got the monarch, and then above him you got the Pope. I told you, that was it. So, government, encomienda system. Yep. Ideas. The requiremento. Ooh, that's a big one. And then all the other stuff. Golly. Economy. Gender social. Human environment. And since we've added one more, technology. So what would be technology? Technology would be guns. Technology would be... yeah. Okay, everybody. This is the end of chapter 19. We're going to do chapter 20 here in just a little bit. I don't know. I may have some pumpkin pie. I don't know. All right. I'll see you on the flip side. Be good, everybody. And especially those of you in the back who are still on your phone. Get off your phone! Family.